I was 15 when this happened, during an overnight youth camping trip. One of the boys who was meant to share a tent with me canceled at the last minute because his family had to travel unexpectedly. That left me setting up and sleeping in the tent by myself. By the time we returned from hiking that evening, the sun was already dropping behind the trees. We hurried to set up camp, but darkness came fast. I struggled to pitch the tent alone, fighting with the poles and stakes until someone finally noticed and helped me finish. Afterward, we ate dinner and sat around the campfire, telling the usual scary stories people always tell in the woods. Eventually, everyone turned in for the night. At first, I didn't mind being alone. The extra space in the tent actually felt nice. I fell asleep quickly. Sometime later, I woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps right outside my tent. Someone was walking around it, stepping hard on the leaves and dirt. My first thought was that it was another camper wandering off to use the bathroom. The tents weren't close together. Our leaders had spaced them far apart, so each of us had a lot of distance from the others. That made the sound feel closer and louder than it probably was. The footsteps didn't move away. Instead, they slowly circled my tent. That's when I assumed someone was messing with me. I called out, asking who it was. There was no answer. The footsteps suddenly moved off into the forest. I considered getting up to see who it was, but I decided it wasn't worth it and tried to go back to sleep. I couldn't. A few minutes later, the footsteps returned. Once again, they went around the tent in a slow circle. This time I was angry. I sat up, grabbed the zipper, and opened the tent, expecting to confront another camper. Instead, I saw an adult man standing there. He was extremely tall, much taller than anyone on the trip, and looked to be in his mid-30s. The moment I saw him, my heart started pounding so hard, I felt frozen in place. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. The man smiled at me. Then he lifted a finger to his mouth, silently telling me to stay quiet. I spun around and ran as fast as I could toward my scoutmaster's tent, screaming uncontrollably. I don't even remember what I was yelling, just pure fear. Before I could reach him, he burst out of his tent, alerted by the noise. I told him everything in broken sentences. The footsteps, the circling, the man standing outside my tent. Without wasting time, he woke the other scoutmaster. One of them grabbed a hunting rifle, and together they rushed back with me toward my tent. They swept the area, shining flashlights into the trees, checking behind trunks and bushes. The man was gone. However, they noticed something else. Clear footprints in the dirt and pine needles, looping around my tent exactly the way I described. The tracks were far too large to belong to any of the boys on the trip. After that, the leaders didn't take any chances. They ordered everyone to move their tents closer, so close they were nearly touching. No more space. No more isolation. The following morning, the trip was ended early. Camp was packed up. We all went home. That night permanently ruined camping for me. I've never gone back into the woods like that again, and I never plan to. Last summer, a few friends and I went camping near a wide river that ran alongside a stretch of dense forest. The hike to the campsite was longer than we expected, deep enough that once night fell, it felt like we were completely cut off from everything else. We spent the evening fishing after dark, playing music and drinking heavily, enough that by late night everything felt hilarious for no real reason. It had to be sometime after 2 a.m. when we finally decided to sleep. I shared a tent with one of my friends, while the other 2 stayed together in a second tent nearby. Not long after lying down, we heard laughter coming from the other tent. At first, we laughed along, thinking they were joking around. But it didn't stop. After a while, it got irritating, so we yelled at them to keep it down. One of them shouted back immediately, sounding confused. "That's not us." I sat straight up. That's when it hit me. It wasn't 2 people laughing. It was only one voice. And it didn't sound like either of my friends. Even though I was drunk, I knew something wasn't right. Someone laughing alone in the middle of the woods at that hour made no sense. The laughter slowly grew louder, closer. My tent mate bolted upright and stared at me, his face suddenly serious. At the same time, we heard one of our other friends yelling over, saying they were starting to freak out. As the laughter continued approaching, I could tell it belonged to a grown man, probably in his 30s or 40s. He sounded drunk, like he was joking around with friends, but the problem was that we never heard anyone else. Just him. And there was something deeply unsettling about the sound itself. I can't really explain it. It felt incomplete somehow. Wrong. You'd have to hear it to understand. The laughter reached the edge of our campsite. Still, there were no footsteps. That alone was terrifying. The ground around us was thick with sticks and leaves. It was impossible to walk through without making noise. Then, without warning, the laughter stopped. Dead silence. We had no idea where the person was. Suddenly, in the pale moonlight, we saw the shape of a hand pressing against the side of our tent. We screamed. Both of us burst out of the tent and ran blindly into the woods. Our other friends followed, shouting and panicking behind us. After what felt like 5 straight minutes of sprinting, we somehow stumbled onto our car. I leaned over and threw up so hard I could barely stand before getting into the driver's seat. I want to be clear, I don't support drinking and driving, but in that moment, staying there felt worse than taking the risk. We just needed to get out. That night remains the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. To this day, I have no idea who or what that was, or what it wanted from us. After graduating college, I went on a solo backpacking trip through a remote area of the Canadian wilderness. When I say remote, I mean completely isolated. The closest town required a 3-hour bus ride to reach, and during the entire 7 days I was out there, I only saw one other human being, and even that was from far away. He passed silently in a canoe, never coming close. That was it. No one else. Because this was before digital cameras were common, I brought several disposable cameras with me. I took photos constantly. Trees, lakes, campsites, sunsets. Nothing unusual. When I returned home, I dropped the cameras off to be developed. Once I got the photos back, I started flipping through them. Most were exactly what I expected: landscapes, empty trails, and nature shots. Then, about halfway through the first roll, everything changed. There were 2 photographs of me asleep inside my tent. I was lying in my sleeping bag. From inside the tent, I completely lost it when I saw them. I panicked so badly I broke down. To this day, I still have no explanation for how those photos were taken. I never used a timer. No one else was there. I've never gone camping again since that trip. I sleep with my bedroom door open and my curtains closed, and even now, I still get the overwhelming feeling that whoever took those pictures is somehow still watching me. My boyfriend and I planned a camping trip to a gorge we'd visited many times before. Usually we went with a group, but this time it was just the 2 of us. We wanted a quiet trip alone. When we arrived and stepped out of the car to organize our gear for the mile-long hike to the campsite, 2 men came out of the trailhead. They looked rough and uneasy, stared at us longer than necessary, then climbed back into an old Volkswagen camper van. I felt uncomfortable immediately, but I brushed it off and continued toward the campsite. I knew the area well and checked several spots before choosing one that was slightly downhill from another camp I noticed higher up. I wanted us to be hidden from view, though not completely out of earshot. I could still hear a man shouting back and forth with someone on the trail. As night approached and we finished setting up, I went to look for firewood. That's when I ran into him. He claimed he was camping alone, but I had clearly heard him yelling earlier. When I asked about it, he hesitated, then said there were some guys camping on the other side of the river. He told us he was lonely and started explaining his life story. He said he was from Pennsylvania, took a bus to Lexington, and had been living in the woods behind where I worked. I knew exactly where he meant. I'd seen homeless people, addicts, and drifters moving in and out of that area daily. He was homeless. Somehow, he'd gotten a ride out to the gorge and decided to live there. He said he survived by eating snakes and bugs and selling firewood. He claimed we were the first people he'd seen in weeks. None of his stories lined up. He eventually took us to his camp, and it was obvious it wasn't meant for one person. There were supplies for several men. He said he liked camping higher up so he could see everything and everyone. From his spot, our campsite was clearly visible. By then, it was fully dark. He helped us start a fire, lingering longer than I wanted. I tried to politely get him to leave so I could talk privately with my boyfriend. Once he finally walked away, I whispered that there was no way I could sleep knowing that lying, unstable man was right up the hill watching us. We had no weapon, no dog, nothing to protect ourselves. My boyfriend convinced me to stay for the night. But all night long, we heard branches snapping and footsteps near our top. Someone was out there. I knew it was him, watching. Finally, I told my boyfriend we needed to leave quietly and immediately. We abandoned our new top because taking it down would make too much noise. That only made us move faster. In my head, I was convinced we were about to be robbed, attacked, or worse. He wasn't alone, and his stories never made sense. Everything about him felt like he was hiding from something, or preparing something.